Did you say something about that?
Yep.
Put that clearly.
All right, welcome back. We have the next game has just started. We have Josh Castellano and Dan Blake. Josh is starting, and we will have the board feed for you in a moment. This is round 17 from Albany, New York. This is Chris Lipe and Randy Goldberg doing commentary. We are in St. Louis, Missouri, and thanks to the technical wizardry of Vince Castellano, we were able to bring you the Scrabble live from Albany, New York. The annual New Year's Eve tournament has long been a great event, and we are very happy to bring this to you. All right, the players have started very eagerly started. We have two plays already on the board. Josh went first, and Dan played Year on top of Urge to cash the Y, and now Josh is looking at a balanced, if somewhat perplexing rack on a board that has has become an early game block. This often happens. Players start the game by playing making parallel plays, and it turns into a block on the board. And it looks like Josh is very much considering continuing the block, and yeah, he has played prob, which is one of Quackle's top choices at least, and really, it scores very well and doesn't give anything back that's not already back. This is the sort of thing that you like to do is, in the first few turns at least, restricting what your opponent can do is a very large portion of the consideration when you're making your play. And in addition to scoring very well and keeping a good lead, playing prob in that position also very much restricts what can be done without the proper, very specific hooks. Dan, on the other hand, does have the S that hooks. He actually has a bingo on this rack that will play. It's a weird strain, it's a weird word, steak it. But Dan comes down and plays eek. Leaving tits. Josh comes down with Oxic pretty quickly, cashing the X, putting it in a spot that isn't really going to be taken advantage of too badly by a parallel play. A parallel play down M column is actually going to be a bit difficult to do, given that you have to hook into the I here, something like this, and then you have to stop unless you have, something with this, something ending in SH to hit CH. So, Oxic is also a defensive play as well as, it's a good play in that there's not much opportunity to do things on this board. And Dan has drawn several different options, possibilities, and hopefully he'll see one of his bingos and play it. And yeah, he's picked up all 7 tiles. He's laying them on the board, and yeah, he found potties, which is fairly common word and solid play. So Dan goes out, gets out to the early lead, gets the first bingo down, and Josh is going to have a bit of an uphill battle from here, but it's certainly not a dire situation for him at all. I can't even keep track of the number of games where my opponent gets the first bingo down. It's a marathon, not a sprint, in a game of Scrabble, and we're barely a third of the way into the game, so there's certainly no need for worries, especially with both blanks still unaccounted for. We had a lot of interesting results come back in the previous round. We have Evans Clinchey is 2 games ahead of the field, currently 14-2. We just saw a thriller of a game that he played against Jason Ubika. He is now facing Bradley Whitmarsh. Stefan Rao is 12-4, having just beaten Bradley Whitmarsh. Adam Logan, 12-4, lost a close one to Jennifer Lee, who bested Adam by 21 points. Brad, 11-5, Jennifer, 11-5, round out the top 5, currently in the Collins division. Josh, having drawn the F, has perhaps an opportunity to cash it alongside the X. That's one potential play. He has Fogey lined up, which will play actually quite nicely at K2. So Fogey will go. It'll fits right right in here very nicely. The F is pretty uniquely unique in that it will work very well in this this play next to the X. Although that will set up an S that Josh doesn't have, so that's perhaps not your ideal. Josh does end up playing Fogey, but across through the I for a few fewer points than it would fit at K2, but it does leave the board more open, which is going to be a consideration when you're playing from behind, as Josh is. It opens up lanes here, it opens up stuff here, it opens up stuff over here, and it's impossible to close all of those at once. It does open up this hotspot and a possibility of a big play through the C if something happens to underlap all of that. Obviously a big play on row 14 there through the C will give back something on row 15. So a lot of positional things coming into play with Josh's play, and it's a solid beginning to a game, and he's starting to develop the board quite nicely. Dan, on the other hand, has a bunch of interesting plays. They'll score low 30s. He even has a possibility of Hansa that scores over 40. And using this spot, that of course gives back O column. So it may be something to avoid. It looks like he's played Ba up top. No, he played Ba up top, which does open up the potential for a lap, a side lap. But it also keeps a really beautiful balanced leave, and saves this spot continues to be open for the mouse that Dan has. Josh is faced with a whole lot of 30-ish point play options. There's a lot of different ways you can cache the V, cache the W. Like there's a lot of different options here. The W will cache nicely down here at this row 14 spot. There's something through there with the W, something EVO, fits very nicely across that. Finishing with the O here precludes any nonsense down the O column. OHO isn't going to take a back hook. And Pav isn't going to take a front hook. So if this goes down here, then there needs to be an intermediate play through here. An intermediate play down K column here to change OHO to something like COHO or BOHO to allow then a play down the O column. So the OHO is going to be dead. Something like that might develop over the course of several turns if EVO does go down at this point. Something a little more aggressive would be EVOE, which of course then opens up the O column directly. There's even opportunity for view. View would go right here, and there might be a little bit of play down here, but the V here is going to cut off any of the more productive nonsense that might otherwise happen going across row 15. And it looks like play has been made, and it's Vow up at the top, which is a fine play. It solves the VW problem. It scores reasonably well, and it does however develop this for an N or an S hook or something along those lines. Dan's sitting on a bare 23-point lead at this point, but he also has the turn, so it's still in control of the game, and plus he has the mouse in hand, so that's going to give him some more opportunities, and it looks like he's already made a play. Yeah, he's played NV through here, which is a great way to cache the V and the Y. Also, it precludes any O column shenanigans from developing. Josh has drawn the Z. He's looking for some something useful to do with it. He has Les set up on his rack. He has Zine set up on his rack, and it looks like Zine is going down. that is unfortunate, given Dan's rack. Of course, Dan's bingo would have played anyway. But Zine it's a reasonable play, similar to the View play last turn. The Z is not that difficult to underlap, but it does serve to restrict it a bit. The I here, you're going to need a specific vol consonant pattern to underlap Zine. Of course, what one would expect if Dan finds his bingo, one would expect it to just front hook E-Zine. And that is, in fact, the only place that his bingo currently plays. Finding this bingo would put Dan in a pretty, in a very good position and pretty dominant position in this game, because it's a pretty big bingo where it lies. There are some other non-bingo plays that are reasonable, and actually, it looks like he's played one of them. He played Heated for 68, saving the S. His bingo was Headset down at E9 for 86, but that's really not that big a miss. Equity-wise, it's probably fewer than 10 points of equity, since he retains the S and still scores 60-plus points. So, absolutely not a terrible play at all. And it puts Josh down by a solid bingo score. He's going to need to deal with the Q and hit a bingo quite soon in order to continue making this a close game. Josh is sitting just under 15 minutes on his clock, going down towards 14. Dan is at 17 and a half minutes. The state of the game is that there are about 38 tiles in the bag, so we're just over halfway through here, and both players have quite a bit of time left on their clocks. So it looks like there's unlikely to be any impact from a clock shortage heading towards the end game. Josh's main concern right here with this rack is what to do with the Q, and the answer may be nothing. It doesn't look like a particularly Q-friendly board, and there is a spot to play QI. There is one spot where QI will play, and that if it's a bit difficult to see. I'll leave it as an exercise for the reader. But that QI play that's a little out of the way, that will definitely be the choice. There are some various other options that Quackle is suggesting, some various exchanges, some various plays trying to cash the M for whatever you can, and holding on to QI. But I think the lone placement of QI on the board is going to be the choice of plays if Josh is to locate where it goes. We're currently on round 17 of 22 in this marathon tournament, over 4 days, over New Year's weekend. The next round will be the last round of the day. The tournament will reconvene tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 Central, 2:30 p.m. in London for the final 4 games of the event. And boy, it looks like it's going to be an exciting finish. Right now we have both in TWL A division and in Collins, the leader has a 2-game advantage on the field, and it is whether something like that is going to be able to be maintained with now we have 6 games to play is it remains to be seen. We'll see how that works out. Josh opts to play dryly at 0-4 and trying to set up his cue. And it actually is a pretty, so it's a bit subtle. It's not that subtle, but you might not immediately think, oh, you're setting up the cue after a play like dryly. And it's a bit awkward to play out of. And actually, as it stands, given Dan's rack and the only vowel that he has, he's not going to be able to block this. So we'll see how this works out for Josh. But that is a clever gambit he's running here, and it should work out. He should be able to drop the cue there. Given that he's drawn a U, we'll see if he chooses to use that spot or if he finds some other cue option. There's the main problem for Josh right now is that the board is not friendly at all. There is actually one monster bingo lane, and that is going to be right here, row 5. Beyond that, there isn't a whole lot happening in the way of bingos, and it's not going to be. I mean, yups will go. So you have an ascending lane in row 10. That's it, and Josh doesn't have an S, so row 10 is right out. And so you're going to need to draw the case S or one of the blanks to hit this or hit this. And the board isn't even that ripe for development. I suppose there is a C unseen. You could hit an IC bingo, 7-letter word ending in C, front hooking it heated. There's not much going on that's going to allow you to develop beyond that. This whole quadrant is not growing. Like there's really are you gonna hit play spa or something and try to develop that? That's a weird play, and there's not extra S's around except for what's on Dan's rack. So this this sort of diagonal line that's very foreboding, and it's going to make it very difficult between that and the fact that this all of this Y in year is this is all empty space. It's going to be really difficult to develop going forward. So Dan, it looks like he played off one of his S's and promptly drew the other S. So he has the same rack again after dropping the S. Josh then dropped the Q in the spot that he created and drew an additional E. So this is the state of the game. It's Dan's play now, facing the same rack that he just had. And Josh is still down a bingo, but he's 10 points closer to reaching shore. Dan is considering some things, picks up some tiles, plays ills and fogies in order to forestall any potential shenanigans with that N10 hotspot. Something within with a J blank could give a bingo score without requiring 7 consecutive tiles to be played. So that's a very reasonable play by Dan. I would also expect Dan to make some play down here somewhat soon. Looking ahead at his rack, even something like NA right here um, is going to be a solid and is going to address this threat, this very very serious threat with two blanks unseen, and some stuff that could make this a 100-point bingo, and instead of just an annoying 80-point bingo. That's going to be probably a priority of Dan's to block off soon. This, of course, this row 10 lane is a much lower priority to block off because Dan has the case S, so it's going to require the blank being made in S, and it gives back lots of play in the A column. So Josh plays Meow down in the corner. That's Quackle's top static choice at least. It does all the things that Josh wants to do with the rack. It cleans up the rack. It scores a couple points. It develops the board. It creates a threat. So there's something that Dan is going to have to try to address immediately, in some way. There's a couple options, different ways that Dan can address this. You could do something just underneath MA, which is going to be you would call it a negative play in that it does not develop. But at this point with this board, you might want to do some negative play. You could also do something like Magma through the M, which will move a couple more tiles. And score maybe a bit more, one more point. The thing, if you play Magma, you're giving back a B column bingo lane. The B column bingo lane is weak, and it gives back the A8 spot, and it gives back an A1 spot. And so it turns into a completely different game if Josh can pull into a bingo that goes down, down that column. But it's, with a lead that Dan has, anything that he does that then creates an opening, it's going to, using those openings are going to create counter openings. So it's not as dire as it might seem, but it may just have you fewer, less volatility, fewer combinations of things that can happen if you just make the negative play down at the bottom, and that's exactly what Dan has done. Josh has captured the first blank and brought it into his Pokedex. It's now sitting on his rack, awaiting training at the nearest blank gym. Unfortunately, he has picked up a J, J, F, U, some stuff that doesn't necessarily play nicely together with said blank. So he's really left with doing a balancing play, dealing with the J this turn, trying to score something for it. It's just what we've seen over and over this tournament. When you have a blank, you're fixing to bingo with it, but it doesn't always happen right away, and you have to have some intermediary turns to groom your rack to do what you need to do. It's a bit difficult in that your best J plays are stuff like Jut. They're Jut. Sort of your best high scoring plays Jut, all stuff that interferes with this row 5 lane that you very much need to keep open, because you very much are going to need a big bingo to come back at this point. So, you're going to have to eschew those plays and find something else, even though score, equity, all of the normal things that you use to evaluate a play tell you, oh, you want to play F at K4. You can't play F at K4. The board position considerations here, and of course, as soon as I say that, he's going to play F at K4. Oh, goodness. Normally that would be obviously the play. It scores the best. It saves the J for another turn, something like that, or Jut, leaving a slightly better leave. I think it's going to be a difficult proposition for him to come back at this point because the board is very, very undeveloped. Really, all you have here is this row 10 thing. What I would have done in that position, it's a really difficult position. There's not a lot going on. Maybe just drop the J, and then try and draw into something with an with the FEU blank rack. So there's really no whiz-bang play that Dan has here. Pretty much everything that Quackle suggests is a small scoring fish, which is probably not the direction that you want to go at this point in the game with the lead that you have. There's not much you can infer from Pho. And there's a definite holding a good rack like this with a lead, heading towards the end of the game. There's 18 tiles left in the bag. There's a definite tendency to want to open because that's what your rack is telling you to do. You're like, I have the better rack. I should open the board. That in the game situation needs to dictate whether you open or close. This late in the game, it needs to be the game situation needs to be a bigger factor rather than what your rack is in whether you open or close. So a play here that unnecessarily opened things up is probably not the way that you're going to want to go with this. And it looks like Dan has just fished off the D, playing Bod. It's essentially it's a waiting move, right? There's nothing to do. You don't have the S-ending bingo. That is the only thing that'll fit on this board. So you just do something that doesn't interfere with your cause. That doesn't give back lanes, that doesn't give back, scoring opportunities. Basically, it's like a pass, except you're, making a play, improving your rack, all these things. You can make an argument for playing Bon also, to undouble the ends. I think the synergy, INGNS, like that, it all seems to work pretty well. And in fact, after his one tile play, Dan drew an E. Josh plays Jado pretty quickly. Not much else to do with the J, honestly. Jado he could have played last time, and that would have been reasonable play instead of just Joe. Jado does have the advantage of not forestalling a future development of this lower right quadrant of the board. It does allow you to make a play down D column here, which then will hopefully develop something on E column. In an ideal game, if you'd played Jado first, then you would hit this second, and then this DE column development stuff wouldn't be required. There is also a possibility of just playing through the A to set up a front hook that makes something happen on the A column. So Dan is still considering his rack. And he, again, hasn't drawn the S-ending bingo. Of course, Jado blocks this row 10 lane, so that's a disadvantage of Jado. But if you're not holding case S, now it is pretty dire on the two consecutive turns. The two likeliest bingo lanes that existed have been systematically dismantled. That's another reason for Joe over Jado on the previous turn is that you don't want to disturb this row 10 lane. Even if you think Dan is holding the case S, if he hits this, then you have a shot for a big bingo. Although if he scores a bingo score, then now you need two to catch up. There are 14 tiles in the bag. And Dan is still thinking here. He has 7 minutes on his clock. Josh has 7 minutes on his clock. I should update Josh's rack. There's Josh's replenishment after playing Jado. He has some options for some play around the J. And actually has a bingo that plays next to the J if it stays open. But we'll see what Dan does. It would be a pretty a good return of events. A good turn of events if Dan makes another waiting play that doesn't address that threat down the D column, and then Josh does hit the bingo, which will score decently and make it a pretty close game. Dan has made a play that does address that issue. He plays Jin, blocking Waitron. Does, however, give something back. There's an N available to play through. Second blank remains buried in the recesses of the tile bag, although Dan has picked up a very fortuitous combination of letters. It looks like Josh is trying to figure out how to fish off the W. He does have a bingo through the N. It's a bit of an airball bingo, but it will make the game a lot closer and give him 7 shots at the second blank. I think hitting his bingo and then coming back with a threat for another bingo with a pool that's not super but not terrible, but does contain a blank. I think that's his best bet. Oh, he's rearranging his tiles in a way that might indicate he has seen the light. Very much rooting for him to find this bingo and turn this into a close game. We haven't decided yet what our next game is going to be. There's been some discussion, and I'll let everybody know what we're going to see for the next round as soon as we have a verdict. There are 2 games remaining today, I believe, or is there one more today? I don't know. They all blur together. There might be one more today. I don't remember. Let's see. This is round 17, so we have one more game today. After the game following this one, please do not stay watching. The stream will end.
I'd say they can watch if they want. There just wouldn't be anything happening.
Yeah, what you should do is stick around and rewatch the games that we already broadcast. Because this is, of course, the most entertaining thing you could possibly find. Josh is down under 4 minutes on his clock, and as I said before, there's like 12 tiles in the bag. You can see what's unseen to Josh displayed on the screen. Of course, the case S and the case E are on Dan's rack. So the pool is going to be a bit dire, but it's going to look like I think Josh needs to hit 2 bingos in order to win this game, because 1 bingo is going to leave him a tempo back. If he plays his bingo this turn, it'll be 60 points, and he'll be at 344 to Dan's 353, and Dan will be on turn. It looks like Josh has fished off the W. He plays Juan in a move that is certain to beget nothing but woe, given Dan's rack. It is a reasonable gambit if you're not if you've missed Wantoner, which is the bingo through the N, and you're looking to make something dynamic happen, then setting up the S hook on the triple lane is certainly reasonable. It's not entirely clear from Dan's plays that he's necessarily holding the case S. You would almost certainly put him on something like EI, NT, very strong leave. But it's not a. But not necessarily the case S. As it were, Dan does have the case S, and would likely come back with lineages. We'll see, though. The pressure of being on these streamed games on the internet it does funny things to people. And no play can be taken for granted. Like there are these moments, and if you haven't played a lot of annotated games or games with people watching, it can rattle you and become a problem. Dan plays leanings. It does not take away the S hook in the A column. It does open up a C hook on row 5, which actually works really well for Josh since he has bingos with a C in the middle. So we'll see how this goes. He also has T's that hook. You have T, S hook here. You have your C hook here for some bingos. So Dan is up by 120, though he's safely home. There isn't going to be an issue. I don't think the outcome of the game is in question. There's been a challenge. Which of the words is being challenged? I'm not sure. But if it does ice the game, it does seal the game for Dan. So if there's any question on whether leaning would take an S or whether Wang is actually valid in the book, you have to grab the 5 points. The difference of the game is not the 5 points. The difference in the game is the bingo that just got played. And so it's a perfectly reasonable challenge for Josh to make. And as we've said before, like if you're not giving away nickels, you're being far too gun shy with the challenge computer. So Dan is going to draw 7 replenishment tiles, leaving 3 remaining in the bag. There is not enough time left in the game for Josh to bingo twice, which is what he would have to do realistically to catch up to his 120-point deficit. It's a difficult, disappointing turn of events. Disappointing turn of events for Josh, just as he had hit Qatar's. It's down goes the bingo on the other side that seals the game. he does find Tractor fairly easily and makes that play. And it's Tractor with the blank in the last position, but the 35-point deficit with only the 3 tiles remaining is a step, a bridge too far, a step too wide, a leap too deep, and it's not to be for Josh Castellano on this day. So Dan actually does have an out bingo, and there's a reasonable chance that he would find it. It's completely unnecessary to the outcome of the game. I don't think there's anything he can do for this to not turn in his favor. Perhaps playing a phony would jeopardize the outcome, but I think Dan is pretty well home. But yeah, he does have the 60-point out bingo to lay on the extra spread. And there's also a bunch of shorter plays that take advantage of the A column. We learned from the chat. Shelly, who is on site, is telling us that Wang is the word that was challenged. One of those slang words that you're never sure if it's too slangy to be in the book or not. But Wang is certainly good. Dan is looking at $1.50 on his clock. Josh has $1.21. So within another 2 or 3 minutes, this game will be finished. More than likely, Dan will emerge as the winner, whether by 100 or by somewhere close to 40 remains to be seen. But it's been a difficult game for Josh. He's been behind pretty much the whole way since Dan hit potties early in the game and hit heated for a big score. Josh has been after heated. Josh was down by a bingo, and it was just a struggle to make it all the way back. He drew the blank, but with the F and the U and the J, and it was a struggle to both keep the board open and make sure his rack was balanced, and all of these different things at once. It was just an ask a little too intense, and it then becomes Dan Blake's victory by a final score of 4-4-5 to 4-0-1. And a game that was, pretty reasonably well played on both sides. And Josh was just slightly unable to make up his early deficit. And the players are filling out their paperwork now. And we'll see if we get... I think we're going to we will be eschewing the interview this game as the next players are ready to begin.
There's 2 times you used that word today.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't like to eschew that word.
Slowly.
So for our final game of the day, we're going to have a TWL matchup. It's going to be Joey Kravchik against Joe Edley, 2 of the top players in the TWLA division. We'll be going at it. Joe
versus Joe.
Joe Edley and Joey Craft Check will be up next. We will pause the stream briefly to reset. And we will rejoin you in probably about 1 minute. So please stay tuned, and we will be back with you in just a moment.